The fork hit my plate with a loud clatter, but I barely heard it over my stepson's voice. "If you don't like it, you can get out," he said, his eyes darting to his mother for backup. And my wife of 10 years, Maria, sitting at the head of the table, I paid for, in the house, I paid for, just stared at me. She said nothing. Her silence was the only answer I needed. In that moment, I heard everything. I stood up, my dinner turning to ash in my mouth, left my plate right there on the table, and walked out the front door. They probably thought I was just going for a drive to cool off, to let them have their way again. They had no idea I was really driving to an 8 a.m. meeting that would tear down the entire life they took for granted, piece by piece. To understand why a man would walk out on a decade-long marriage because of one look, you have to understand the 10 years that came before it. I met Maria when her son Leo was just 8. I fell for her, hard and fast. She was so vibrant and warm, and I could see a future with her that I wanted more than anything. She'd had it rough. A deadbeat ex had saddled her with a ton of debt and a real fear of instability. I made a promise to her and to myself that I'd be the one to give her and Leo the security they deserved. For 10 years, I thought I was keeping that promise. I wasn't just a stepdad, I was the bank. I was the one and only provider, something I used to be proud of. Turns out it was my biggest weakness. The house we lived in, this beautiful 4-bedroom colonial with a big backyard, it wasn't our house, it was my house. I bought it 2 years before I even met Maria. Every mortgage payment, every tax bill, every ridiculously expensive repair, it all came out of my paycheck. When we got married, I put her name on the deed. I did it out of love, thinking we were building a partnership. It was a symbol of my trust. I never dreamed that piece of paper would be used against me to make me feel like a stranger in my own home. My job in software architecture was a pressure cooker, long hours, tons of stress. But I never complained. It paid for the life Maria and Leo were enjoying. It paid for Maria's part-time boutique job, which was really more of a hobby for her lunch money. It funded the yearly beach vacations to places I hated but went anyway, because it made them happy. It funded the constant stream of new gadgets for Leo, from the brand new gaming console on release day to the top-of-the-line phone he had to have every single year. I'll never forget Leo's 16th birthday. He wanted a car, not just any car, a brand new one that cost more than my first 2 cars put together. I suggested a safe, reliable used car. A practical compromise, right? The fight that followed was one for the ages. Leo called me cheap and said I was trying to embarrass him. And Maria? Instead of having my back, she played the gentle mediator, always leaning in her son's favor. "He just wants to fit in, honey," she'd say in that soft voice. "Don't you remember being a teenager?" In the end, I caved. I co-signed a loan for that brand new car, a loan that, of course, I made all the payments on. It was just another bill on the budget that only I ever looked at. But it wasn't just the big stuff. It was the slow, daily chipping away of respect that really wore me down. I became the house ATM and handyman, the guy who fixed everything, but I was never treated like a parent. Whenever I tried to teach Leo some responsibility, suggesting a summer job, doing chores without getting paid, I'd get shot down by both of them. Leo would roll his eyes and disappear into his room, and Maria would pull me aside. "Don't be so hard on him," she'd whisper. "He's still just a kid." He was a kid at 16, a kid at 18, and now at 22, he was still just a kid living under my roof, eating my food, with no job and no plans. My attempts to be a father were always blocked, painting me as the bad guy. They were a team, and I was just the obstacle they had to manage. The money was one thing, but it was the emotional drain that left me bankrupt. I paid for everything, but I had no say in anything. My opinions, from big financial decisions down to what was for dinner, were just suggestions, easily vetoed by Leo's whining or Maria's sighs. I was the engine chugging away in the dark, powering the whole train, while they sat in the comfy passenger cars complaining about the ride being a little bumpy. For 10 years, I just swallowed it. I told myself this was the price you pay for a blended family. I told myself my love for Maria was enough. I truly believed she loved me too, even with her massive blind spot for her son. I was wrong. The end came on a totally unremarkable Tuesday. I'd just gotten home from a brutal day at work. A multi-million-dollar project had hit a wall, and I'd spent 12 hours putting out fires. I was wiped out. All I wanted was a quiet meal. When I walked in, Leo was sprawled on the couch, screaming at the TV. His afternoon snack wrappers were all over the floor. I sighed, picked them up, and threw them away without a word from him. In the kitchen, Maria gave me a quick peck on the cheek, her attention already somewhere else. "Rough day?" she asked, but she didn't wait for an answer. We sat down for dinner. For a few minutes, there was just the sound of forks and knives and explosions from Leo's game in the other room. I decided to bring up a touchy subject. "Leo," I started, trying to keep my voice calm. "The community college is having an open house for their IT certification program. I thought we could check it out this weekend." Leo didn't even look up. "Not interested," he mumbled. "It's a 6-month program, son," I pushed. "It could get you a great job. Get you started." He finally looked at me, pure annoyance on his face. "I'm not going to some crappy community college. I'll figure it out." "Figure what out?" I asked, my frustration starting to show. "You've been figuring it out for a year, Leo. You're 22. You can't just play video games for the rest of your life. You have to actually participate in the world." That's when he snapped. He slammed his fork down on his plate. "You know what? I'm sick of this. I'm sick of you always judging me, acting like you're so much better than me. This is my house too, and I'm tired of you telling me how to live in it." My house too. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I looked at this young man I had housed and fed and supported for a decade, who had never contributed a single dime, and I just felt this cold rage. But before I could say anything, I looked at my wife, my partner. I needed her to step in, to defend me, to correct her son's unbelievable entitlement. She just met my gaze. Her face was completely blank. No anger at him, no support for me, nothing. Just a thin, straight line for a mouth. And in her silence, I saw her choice. She was choosing him. She was choosing the easy way out, avoiding a fight with her son. She was letting him treat me like dirt in the house I paid for. She was agreeing with him. "If you don't like it," Leo sneered, feeling brave now, "you can get out." And that was it. The final straw. A decade of being taken for granted, all boiled down into that one single moment. My wife watched her son throw me out of my own house, and she did nothing. I looked from his smug face to her blank one, and the whole illusion of our family just shattered. There was no us. There was them, and then there was me, and I was just the guy paying the bills. Section 3, the quiet resolve and strategic execution. I stood up. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. A weird, icy calm just washed over me. The anger was still there, burning like a hot coal in my chest, but now it was focused. I looked at them one last time. Leo was smirking like he'd just won. Maria was staring down at her plate. "Okay," I said. My voice was so quiet it seemed to startle them. I turned and walked out. I grabbed my keys and my jacket. As I opened the front door, I heard Maria's voice, a little shaky now. "Where are you going?" I didn't answer. I just closed the door behind me. That click was the end of my old life. They thought I was just cooling off. They assumed I'd be back in an hour, tail between my legs, ready to go back to my role as the provider. And that's what I always did. Not this time. I drove for an hour, the highway lights blurring past, my mind a storm of hurt, betrayal, and a strange new feeling. Freedom. I checked into a clean, anonymous hotel and pulled out my laptop. For the first time, I looked at my finances not as our money, but as my assets. The numbers were sickening. The mortgage, the cars, the insurance, the utilities, Maria's credit card bills full of spa days and clothes I'd never see. I was funding a life for two people who saw me as an ATM, and my resolve hardened into steel. The next morning, I drove to my bank. I sat down with the branch manager, Sarah, who I knew by name. "Sarah," I said calmly, "I'm separating from my wife. I need to financially disentangle myself. Immediately." Over the next hour, we performed quiet, brutal financial surgery. First, a new checking and savings account, just in my name. I filled out a new direct deposit form, rerouting my entire salary. Payday was in 3 days. They wouldn't know a thing until the money just didn't show up. Next, the joint accounts. I withdrew my legal half from our savings, leaving Maria's share. Then the credit cards. Maria was an authorized user on my main cards, the ones she used for gas, groceries, everything. I need to remove an authorized user, I told Sarah. She made the call. Just like that, Maria's cards were useless plastic. I also logged into the auto loan for Leo's car. I was the primary borrower. I switched the payments from auto draft to manual. The next payment was due in a week. I had no intention of paying it. My last stop was a lawyer. I laid out the whole 10-year story. He listened, taking notes. His advice was simple. You've made the right moves, he said. When they realize the money's gone, they will panic. Be ready. I walked out of his office with a folder of paperwork and a clear plan. I didn't feel happy, just a grim sense of purpose. I'd spent a decade building their world. I had just torn it down in 3 hours. For 2 days, nothing. I worked from the hotel, ignoring a few half-hearted texts from Maria. Are you still mad? One read. Come home. They thought my anger was a tantrum that would just blow over. They had no clue. The storm hit on Friday, payday. Around 10 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Maria. Hey, did your direct deposit post? The account looks low. I ignored it. An hour later. Okay, I'm at the grocery store and the card was declined. This is so embarrassing. Can you call the credit card company? I read it and felt a knot form in my stomach. It was starting. I didn't reply. Then the calls started, one after another. I let them all go to voicemail. Then a flood of frantic texts. What is going on? My other card was declined too. I tried to get cash from the ATM and it said insufficient funds. Did you do something? This isn't funny. I called the bank. They said I was removed as an authorized user. They said you did it. Answer your phone. Leo needs gas for his car. What did you do? The voicemails got worse. The first one was just annoyed. The second was full of panic. By the third, she was hysterical. What am I supposed to do? She shrieked into the phone. I have a cart full of groceries. The gas card was declined. Everything is being declined. Leo is stuck. You can't just do this. You've stolen all of our money. Our money. It echoed in my head. It was always my money when it was earned, but our money when it was spent. I couldn't believe the entitlement. She wasn't sorry for what happened. She wasn't worried about me. She was just furious that the bank of Dad was closed. That evening, the texts from Leo started. They weren't panicked, just angry and arrogant. Yo, where's the money? Mom is freaking out. I can't believe you would do this to your own family. Turn the cards back on, now. You're a real piece of work, you know that? After everything we've done for you, that last one almost made me laugh. Everything they'd done for me. The delusion was staggering. They didn't see me as a person, they saw me as a service. And now that the service was cut off, they were just screaming into the dark, demanding someone turn the lights back on. I saved every text and every voicemail. My lawyer told me to. It was all evidence now. Section 5. The confrontation and justification. They found me the next day. Maria must have been obsessively checking the old bank statements, saw a charge for a restaurant near the hotel and put it together. There was a loud banging on my hotel room door around 9 p.m. I looked through the peephole. It was both of them, faces twisted with rage. I took a breath and opened the door, blocking the entrance. What do you want? I asked, my voice completely flat. What do we want? Maria screeched, trying to push past me. We want you to turn our lives back on. What gives you the right to steal our money? Leo stood behind her, arms crossed. Yeah, what's your problem? You're supposed to take care of us. I held up a hand, and the simple, calm gesture actually made them stop. First, I said, my voice dangerously quiet, let's be very clear. It is not and has never been our money. It is my money from my job. I stepped back and picked up the thick folder from the desk. I've been waiting for this, I said, opening it. For 10 years, I paid the mortgage on a house I owned before we ever met. That's over $300,000. I pulled out a spreadsheet. For 6 years, I paid for the car you drive, Leo, a car I told you not to get. That's almost $28,000, not including the insurance, which I also paid for. I kept going, my voice even, just laying out cold, hard facts. I paid for every vacation, every grocery bill. I paid for the degree you got and never used, Maria. I paid for the game consoles, the phones, and the entire cost of living for a 22-year-old man who won't get a job. In 10 years, my income has supported this family to the tune of over $1.2 million. And what did I get in return? Disrespect, being treated like a walking wallet. And finally, I was told to get out of my own house while my wife sat there and watched. I looked right at Maria. Her face had gone from furious to ghostly white. Your silence was an endorsement, Maria. You co-signed his disrespect. You made your choice. You chose him over me, over our marriage. Now you get to live with it. Leo scoffed. So what? You're just leaving us with nothing? No, I said, turning to him. I'm leaving you with exactly what you've earned. Your mother has her half of the savings. And you, Leo, have a world of opportunity. It's called getting a job. I'm done funding your childhood. I closed the folder. Since I'm not welcome in my house, my financial support for it is also gone. The mortgage is due in 2 weeks. The utilities are in my name and will be shut off on the 1st of the month. The car payment is due. This is your reality now. You wanted me out? You got it. They just stood there speechless. The anger was gone, replaced by the cold, terrifying realization that this wasn't a fight. It was a final judgment. If you believe that respect is non-negotiable and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stand up for your own self-worth, then subscribe to this channel for more stories about taking your power back. In the weeks that followed, their world fell apart just like you'd expect. A foreclosure notice was slapped on the door of the house. Maria couldn't afford it on her own and was forced to sell. After the mortgage was paid, there wasn't much left. Leo's shiny car was repossessed a month after I stopped the payments. A very public reality check for him. My phone was flooded with calls and texts that swung wildly from tearful apologies to bitter accusations and desperate pleas for a second chance. But I knew where it was coming from. They weren't sorry for how they treated me. They were just sorry that there were consequences. I filed for divorce. It was surprisingly clean. Since the house was mine before the marriage and I had the receipts to prove I'd paid for everything, she didn't have much of a claim. She had to sell her own car to pay off her debts and ended up in a small apartment with Leo. The last I heard, he was working at a fast food joint and Maria had a full-time job as a cashier. And me, I found something I didn't even realize I'd lost. Peace. My life is much simpler now. I have a smaller place that's all mine. My money is my own. My decisions are my own. The quiet in my apartment isn't the silence of tension, it's the silence of calm. I learned a very expensive lesson. You can't make someone value you. All you can do is set your own price. And if they're not willing to pay it, you have to be strong enough to walk away.